What's up, guys? Welcome back to yet another riveting episode here on the Avion Awesome channel. Today I am going to give you all some examples of some of my most used items that I have used like since I've been full-time in this camper. So this is not like a hey, these are these specific types of tools that I like to use. This is kind of like a random assortment of stuff that I find myself using almost on a daily basis. Just stuff that I wouldn't want to be without. And granted, these items are probably going to be either more or less important to individual people based on your needs, based on location, and all that kind of stuff. But I try to pick these items based on everyday usage, every single day. Stuff that I really use. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the biggest determining factor as to whether or not this list is going to be, for you or not, is are you going to use them every single day? And I'll try and give you a few examples of, just how useful these items genuinely are, not only to me, but maybe even potentially to you. Okay, so the first item on my list is going to be my Induction Cooktop. I use this thing every single solitary day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use this thing. First of all, it runs on electricity, which is awesome, especially if you're going to be staying at campgrounds. And even if you're not going to be staying at campgrounds, let's just say that you are staying out there in the middle of the wilderness, you're boondocking, but you have solar. Boom, this thing works great. Guess what? It also works great on a typical gas generator. Perfect solution. And you can still cook plenty of food without having to run up there to your local gas station and refill those propane tanks every 2 or 3 days. Not to mention, it's just overall really handy for warming up water. It's really handy for, not having to constantly be outside grilling all the time. Again, using propane or having to collect firewood. It also saves you from potentially starting a forest fire. It's just all around an extremely good, handy tool for just about anyone, whether you're in an established camper, or if you happen to be, let's just say, a van dweller. You just don't have the room for a big oven and cooktop like most traditional campers have in them. This takes up very, very little room, and it can be stuffed and placed just about anywhere. So the next item on my list is going to be these little guys. These are those plastic encased ice cubes. I happen to pick mine up from Walmart, but you can also find them on Amazon. There is absolutely nothing worse than having to constantly run up to the store and go pick up a bag of ice, or to constantly fill and dump ice trays, trying to keep those all in there. Even if you don't have water, but you have some sort of refrigeration, which I'm going to assume that most people do, you're going to have ice cubes. A little trick that I like to use is I like to use these styrofoam cups, but you can use whatever kind you want. But the styrofoam tends to help hold in the cold a little bit longer, helps keep my drinks and my ice from melting quite as fast. And then I use a second one. So like maybe one I'll use just for straight up water. Maybe the other one I'll have a soda in or something like that. But whenever I'm done drinking that drink, you could just put the glass back in the freezer, and then pull out the next one that already still has nice frozen ice in it, right? Something to that effect. I usually keep 3 of these styrofoam cups full of these ice cubes, so that when one is done and all the ice is beginning to melt, I put that one back in the refrigerator and grab the next one out in line, and then fill it up with water or whatever. Drink it, and when this one's done, I can go right in and grab the next one, and by the time this one or the last one has been put back in the freezer, this one is ready to come right back out. I have an endless supply of ice, and I couldn't be happier with these plastic ice cubes. Now, I think I've showed you guys these things a couple different times, but these are those motion activated lights that I picked up from Walmart. These were made by, I think they're just GE lights or whatever. But they have a motion sensor on them, and if you are concerned, especially if you're on solar, about using up undue electricity because you're forgetful about leaving your lights on and stuff like that, these things put out a ton of light. I got the ones that had the highest brightness setting, and even on the highest brightness setting, like this one only uses 1.5 watts, and this one I think uses 1.8 watts. Not very much at all, and each one of them has a different length of time that they're going to stay on. I think this one stays on for about a minute after it stops detecting motion. This one stays on about 90 seconds. I have found them absolutely invaluable. I use them all the time. I plug them all around the camper, and as I move through the camper, lights automatically come on, and when I'm no longer in that area, lights go off. Now, to kind of tie into those lights, I've also got these little string lights. I think some people call them fairy lights, but I didn't get the ones that will plug, that plug directly into a standard outlet. I got the one that is a USB, right? So when I plug these guys in, I can plug them into a wall outlet, fine. They come on just like you would expect that they would. But let's just say that I'm, just stopping over at a truck stop for the night and I'm not hooked up to my generator and don't have my plug plugged into into my generator or whatever. I can use a battery bank, and I just plug these lights directly into my battery bank and I'm good to go. So I can pop the standard wall outlet plug off, plug them into the battery bank, click, and now they're on. And I think that's another thing we should probably talk about, are these battery banks. You can pick these things up relatively cheap these days. This one has about 20 amp hours built in. It's got 20,000 milliamp hours, so that equates to about 20 amp hours. These little fairy lights, these string lights, will last absolutely forever. And having a good amount of light inside your camper, especially some of those ones that just don't have a lot of windows, having a good amount of lighting in your camper is absolutely essential to making you, feel comfortable in your own space. It sucks to feel like you're in a coffin all the time. But for those of you that also like to do a lot of traveling, backpacking, and stuff like that, these battery banks are absolutely invaluable. They're small, they're lightweight, they're fairly convenient, and you can charge up phones, laptops, tablets, and also charge up your lighting. And speaking of rechargeable lighting is this light right here. This light here is a strip light. It's actually a motion activated closet light, but I use it all the time because it does have a setting that when you push the button and hold it, the light comes on and it will just stay on. The great thing about this light also is that it is magnetic on the back, so a lot of times I will just clip it right up here, and because it's magnetic, it also attaches to anything else in your camper that might have some type of metal strip to it. It can also be used, like, say, underneath the hood of your car if you happen to be changing the oil, or maybe swapping out your spark plugs or something like that. I've got a whole video about where I talk about the awesome uses of this particular light, and you can find that up here in the right hand corner. The next thing on my list is going to be baby wipes. I cannot tell you how many different amazing uses that you are going to find for baby wipes, not only for your butt, but also for cleansing your hands, wiping your pits, getting the important bits nice and clean when you don't have access to water or you don't want to use up a whole lot of water. This is so much better than toilet paper, I swear. I have been using baby wipes for literally years and years and years and years. I don't even use toilet paper. The only reason I keep toilet paper in the camper is to maybe blow my nose, or for company that might still use toilet paper and that type of thing. But the best part is that once these things dry out, they make an excellent, just like a wipe pad, and they can also be used as tinder if you happen to be going out and starting a fire later on. These are paper products, so they will help light your fire and be useful in that regard just as much as, say, like your paper plates or your paper cups. I use them for everything. Don't leave home without them. Next thing on my list is going to be my GoPro. I know that a lot of us have, cell phones, and we have lots of accessory type cameras that, we think that that's all that's going to be useful or necessary, but I can't begin to tell you how useful a good action cam really is. Most people think that their phone is going to be just fine, and in most cases I would say that it probably is, but with this type of camera, because it's such a wide angle of view, everything's in focus all the time. When you use this camera as opposed to, say, this camera that I'm using right now, or a phone camera, everything is always going to be in focus. None of it is never not going to be in focus. So when you need to get the shot and you want to make sure that you haven't ruined it by not having the camera in focus, not to mention it's shockproof, it can go in the water, it can just do so much stuff, not to mention stabilization so it doesn't look all crazy and wobbly. If you don't have one of these yet, you should really, really consider getting one and putting it at the very least side by side with your phone. That way you have all of your bases covered, just about 98% of every single photographic situation you're going to find yourself in. And last but not least is Reflectix. I cannot begin to tell you how much I love Reflectix. At any given time, if I find a little drafty area somewhere in my camper, or if I want to help insulate an otherwise area in my camper that's like just not holding in the amount of heat I think that it should, I just keep a bunch of Reflectix extra. I'll put it and line the inside of my cabinet sometimes. Like if I find a little area, I cannot begin to tell you how useful this stuff is. You can also use it for camping supplies. You can wrap your pots, helping to keep heat in. I've made pouches out of this stuff so that when I'm trying to reheat freeze-dried food or whatever, I can just keep all that heat locked into that little pouch. I use it for absolutely all types of insulating projects. This stuff can be bought, I think, for, I don't know, maybe $1 a foot. I think you can go to your big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's and you can pick up a 50-foot roll of this. I'm gonna say for roughly 40 to 50 bucks. But wait, there's more. Probably the best little item that I have that, you know, really does help keep down my gas costs and my fuel, and keeps my fuel economy high, is my Segway. Now, this is an extremely niche item. I know that there's probably going to be very, very few of you that are actually going to invest in this tool, but I do use it damn near every day. Whether I am at a campground or whether I'm in a big city, I can park my truck somewhere, pull this thing out of the back seat, take off down the road, do some shopping, do some photography or whatever, and then drive this back to my gas guzzling truck where I can then move on and be about my day. But this thing is so awesome. I've used it damn near literally nonstop for maybe the last 2 or 3 years. I've got probably 1,000, 1,500 miles on this thing thus far. I absolutely would never leave home without this thing. And of course, for those of you that have been around long enough, you'll know that I've done a couple of different videos on the Segway, and of course, I will link those down in the description box down below. At any rate, thanks so much for watching yet another riveting episode here on the Avion Awesome channel. I'm your host, Mark Puckett, and I'm going to see you guys again on the next one. Peace.